This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let me circle back to something we talked about earlier about 96 and 97 being really such a pivotal time for the company. That's easy to look back in hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight and say, boy, a lot of stuff was changing here. When it's happening here in late April, 96, did you feel like the company was at, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a crossroads? Like you had to make a decision, like you couldn't continue to do things that you had been doing. Brett's on hiatus and Razor and Diesel, they're leaving. And we've got this new babyface champion who is probably the best in-ring performer in the world. But who are we going to let him wrestle? I mean, we just signed this big monster Vader, but he's not really up and going yet because he came in hurt. Did you feel like, oh shit, man, we got real competition on the other channel and it's just getting steeper? We're at a crossroads.
Change was in the air.
Yeah.
And you felt it. So no matter what anybody wants to say, when you look back at it with hindsight being 2020, you have to understand that being in it at the time, you're fighting and you are in some ways just trying to stay alive, and you're trying to be competitive because now it's at a point where, well, wait a minute, there is another game in town and there's somebody that has got an awful lot of money and someone that is going to be aggressively coming after us. So you have to view your business in a different way. And I dare say that advice to anybody in business, regardless of whether you're the only game in town, you should never look at your business as being the only game in town. You should always look at different ways to reinvent and different ways to change what you're doing to stay with the times. And at this time in the business, you could feel the change coming through, whether you liked it or not. You could feel that change coming through because people were talking, people were buzzing about what ifs, and there were a lot of what ifs out there in that atmosphere.
Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. Let's talk about WrestleMania 12. Meltzer would say, it appears that WrestleMania 12 did approximately the same level of buys as last year's show, although that level actually remains a subject of widespread discrepancies. However, the WWF did shatter a record 1 week later by drawing a 4.7 rating unopposed for the April 8th edition of Monday Night Raw, which featured the television return of the Ultimate Warrior, plus Shawn Michaels versus Jerry Lawler and Vader versus Yokozuna. The latter figure, which amounted to 3.05 million homes, was the second largest audience from start to finish average to ever see a pro wrestling television show in the history of cable TV, trailing only the 1988 Royal Rumble, which averaged 3.2 million homes and an 8.2 rating. By the way, that's because there's so few homes that have cable back in 88. But still, here we are saying, man, things are changing, but then you bounce back with such a strong rating. And again, it's unopposed, but a record Raw rating, that's got to make you feel good. In hindsight, where does the credit belong on that? It feels like it belongs to the
all on me.
It feels like it's a combination of there's no competition and the Ultimate Warrior's there. Would you say that, or internally are you guys saying, well, it's really Shawn?
I think it's a combination of all the above. It was new. It was the return of the Warrior, and people wanted to see what he'd been gone for a while. So yeah, I credit the Warrior a lot for that because it was new again. Let's
mention that Meltzer wrote, the WWF took excellent advantage of its largest Raw audience ever with one of its best shows ever. The company shot angles to heat up the upcoming Shawn Michaels versus Diesel match and Ultimate Warrior versus Goldust pay-per-view matches on April 28th. They also built farther into the future for an eventual pay-per-view match with Vader versus Yoko, which we expect to take place in May or June, and Ahmed Johnson versus Davey Boy Smith, which will be a house show program for May and no doubt hit pay-per-view at some point. I do want to mention the April 15th show did a 3.1 rating and Nitro did a 2.8. So you're still winning, but it's not nearly the runaway that it was before. Let's talk about some news and notes, because even though we're saying, oh, it's an interesting time, when you compare it to 95, my goodness, business is so much better. Your average attendance in May of 95 is 3,440 fans. It's up 71.2% the following year to 5,890 fans on average. Not only is the attendance up, so is the gate. Your average gate in May of 95 was $43,250. We're up 120% to $95,214. And television ratings are actually down just a little bit, going from a 2.3 to a 2.2. But if we've learned anything from listening to Eric Bischoff, he says a 1/10 of a point is a fucking rounding error. But there's no denying, 71% more people, 120% more money. Business is turned around from 1995.
And it was. And, that's where I go back to the foundation, and the foundation kind of being built, and it was shifting. It was changing. The movement of Diesel and Razor at that time, it forced a bigger change on the backside of that. But even when, you look at the ratings war and what have you, oh my God, business overall they weren't putting us out of business at that point. It was, in a lot of respects, and again, you want to compare books, I would say that the profit and what have you would probably go in our favor, because WCW was spending a lot of money. And even when you look at that side of it, and I don't know that side of it as much as, say, an Eric Bischoff, but when people would bitch and moan about the kind of cut Hulk Hogan was getting on his merchandise and what have you, and you look at it and go, compared to what? They weren't doing shit.
Right.
Hulk being there and actually selling merchandise and getting them to see and participate in other things is like, okay, he created something and created this that had not been there before. It wasn't like, no knock on Ray, but Glacier T-shirts weren't flying off the shelves.
Right.
So, it was just a unique time in the business, and things were changing, and we were trying to keep up with that change without, going head to head, trying to match bank accounts with Ted Turner.
Memorialize it. And that's what we're going to try to do today with In Your House 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies. I'm so excited to talk about 1996 with you. This was originally supposed to have happened, I don't know, about a week ago, but because of the remix, here we are. So I'm excited to cover this one.
You were out.
Yeah, I was.
How was Mom and Dad's anniversary?
It was great, man. Yeah, we celebrated their 41st anniversary, and their favorite thing in the world is to go to the beach. So we rented a house on the beach, and when you were available, I was out of pocket and not near any recording opportunities. So we had a backup plan, and I thought it turned out okay. We got to pay tribute to Terry Gordy on what would have been his 60th birthday. That's when our Michael Hayes remix dropped last week. So it was a nice little touch.
Yeah. Love me some Boom Boom.
Let's get into this one.
Bing Bings.
April 28th, 1996 is when In Your House 7 went down. Omaha, Nebraska is the home here. It's a sellout. 9,563 fans. So we're running smaller buildings, but that may be a big building in Omaha. 8,273 paying fans. Had a gate of $120,668. Check this out. Doesn't sound like a ton of money given the Attitude Era that's right around the corner, but this is the largest wrestling gate ever in Omaha. And it's a show that sold out about 5 hours before match time. This is an interesting year for the company. I think, we could talk about 96 and 97 forever here on the show because, we're, as JR likes to say, neither fish nor fowl. We're not exactly flopping around losing money like we were in 94 and 95. But we're not exactly in a boom like we would have been in say the mid to late 80s or just a couple years after this. Would you agree with that, that 96 and 97 are two of the more critical and pivotal years in company history?
I think they were building years, and they were years where we were making a foundation for the future. So a lot of things were changing, and it was neither good nor bad. Wasn't great, but it wasn't earth-shatteringly bad either. So it was a foundation building time that you just took to create and do what you can for the future.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.